In the remote village of Vukovar, nestled deep within the Carpathian Mountains, there existed a tale as old as time itself, a tale whispered in hushed tones around flickering hearth fires, passed down through generations like a dark inheritance. It was a story of the undead, of creatures that prowled the shadows with insatiable hunger, creatures known as vampires. It all began in the year 1738, when a young Serbian girl named Stanoska went to bed in perfect health, only to awaken in the dead of night, her screams piercing the tranquil silence of the village. She thrashed and shook as if possessed by some unseen force, her terror palpable as she recounted her harrowing ordeal. Stanoska claimed that her deceased son, Hadik Milo, who had been laid to rest just 9 weeks prior, had returned from beyond the grave to assault her. She described how his cold, lifeless hands had wrapped around her throat, squeezing the very breath from her lungs until she thought her heart would burst from her chest. From that fateful night onward, a dark cloud seemed to descend upon Stanoska and her family. Illness plagued them relentlessly, their once vibrant health withering away like wilting flowers under a relentless sun. Desperate whispers spread throughout the village, fueling rumors of curses and malevolent spirits haunting the cursed family. But it was not long before others in the village began to fall victim to the same mysterious maladies. People grew weak and pale, their vitality draining away with each passing day. Fear gripped the hearts of the villagers as they struggled to comprehend the source of their suffering. Rumors soon began to circulate that the village was cursed by the undead, that the restless spirits of the deceased had risen from their graves to prey upon the living. Terrified whispers spoke of sightings in the dead of night, shadowy figures flitting through the darkness, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly hunger. As the dread spread like wildfire through the village, fear gave way to hysteria. Accusations flew like arrows, tearing through the fragile bonds of trust that had once held the community together. Neighbor turned against neighbor, each casting suspicious glances at the other, wondering who among them might be harboring the dark secret of their true nature. In the midst of the chaos, a lone figure emerged from the shadows, a mysterious stranger whose arrival coincided with the onset of the village's troubles. Clad in a cloak of midnight black, with eyes as cold and piercing as shards of ice, he cast an enigmatic aura that set the villagers on edge. Some whispered that he was a traveler from distant lands, while others claimed he was a sorcerer who dabbled in the dark arts. But regardless of his origins, one thing was certain: he possessed knowledge of the supernatural that surpassed that of any mortal man. With a voice like velvet and eyes that seemed to pierce the very depths of one's soul, the stranger spoke of ancient legends and forgotten truths, of creatures that lurked in the shadows, feeding on the lifeblood of the living to sustain their unholy existence. He warned of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic village, urging the villagers to heed his words before it was too late. But despite his warnings, the stranger's presence only served to deepen the sense of unease that hung over the village like a shroud. Suspicion and paranoia ran rampant as the villagers grappled with the terrifying possibility that the enemy they sought to vanquish might walk among them, disguised as friend or kin. And so, as the darkness continued to spread its tendrils ever further, engulfing the village in a maelstrom of fear and uncertainty, the stage was set for a confrontation unlike any the world had ever seen. For lurking in the shadows, biding their time until the moment was ripe for their triumphant return, the vampires waited patiently, their thirst for blood growing ever stronger with each passing night. As the village of Vukovar teetered on the brink of despair, a sense of grim determination settled over its inhabitants. Despite the fear that gripped their hearts like icy claws, they knew that they could not afford to cower in the shadows while the darkness encroached upon their home. Led by the enigmatic stranger whose presence had stirred both intrigue and suspicion, a small band of brave souls emerged from the safety of their homes, steeling themselves for the battle that lay ahead. Armed with makeshift weapons and hearts brimming with resolve, they set out into the night, determined to uncover the truth behind the village's descent into madness. Their journey took them deep into the heart of the surrounding forest, where ancient trees loomed like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers towards the heavens. Guided by whispers of ancient folklore and half-remembered legends, the group pressed onward, their footsteps muffled by the soft carpet of fallen leaves that carpeted the forest floor. As they ventured deeper into the darkness, the air grew thick with a palpable sense of foreboding, as if the very fabric of reality itself were unraveling around them. Strange noises echoed through the trees, a chorus of mournful wails and eerie whispers that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the earth. Suddenly, without warning, they stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight, its ethereal glow casting long shadows that danced like specters in the night. And there, amidst the swirling mist that shrouded the clearing in an otherworldly haze, they beheld a sight that chilled them to the core. Before them stood a crumbling mausoleum, its ancient stones weathered by centuries of neglect. Strange symbols adorned its weathered facade, their meaning lost to the ravages of time. And yet, despite its decrepit state, there was an undeniable aura of power that emanated from its crumbling walls, a sense of ancient magic that sent shivers down the spines of all who beheld it. With a sense of trepidation, the group approached the mausoleum, their senses on high alert for any sign of danger. As they drew closer, they could hear the faint sound of chanting, a haunting melody that seemed to echo from deep within the bowels of the earth. Summoning their courage, they pushed open the heavy stone doors, their hinges groaning in protest against the passage of time. And there, illuminated by the flickering light of torches that lined the walls, they beheld a sight that filled them with dread. For within the depths of the mausoleum, surrounded by a throng of shadowy figures whose eyes gleamed with unholy hunger, stood the source of their village's torment, the vampires, ancient and powerful beings whose very existence defied the laws of nature. And as the realization dawned upon them, the group knew that they stood on the precipice of a battle that would determine the fate of not only their village, but the world itself. For the vampires had been awakened from their slumber, and they hungered for blood. The vampires, their eyes glowing like hot coals in the dim light of the mausoleum, turned their attention towards the intruders with a mixture of curiosity and malice. A palpable tension hung in the air, thick with the promise of impending violence. But before either side could make a move, a voice pierced the silence, a voice that seemed to emanate from the very shadows themselves. It was the stranger, his presence commanding attention even in the face of such ancient evil. "I come not as your enemy, but as your ally," he declared, his voice ringing with authority. "I seek only to uncover the truth behind the darkness that plagues this land." The vampires regarded him with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, their feral instincts warring with their curiosity. And yet, despite their innate distrust of mortals, they could not deny the power that radiated from the stranger, a power that seemed to echo the very essence of their own immortal existence. For long moments, the two sides stood locked in a silent standoff, each waiting for the other to make the first move. And then, with a nod of assent from their leader, a regal figure whose eyes burned with a fierce intelligence, the vampires stepped forward, their movements fluid and graceful despite their monstrous nature. As they drew closer, the stranger raised his hand in a gesture of peace, his eyes never leaving the dark, predatory gaze of the creatures before him. "We seek only to understand," he said, his voice soft but firm, "to uncover the truth behind the curse that has befallen this village, and to put an end to the suffering that plagues its people." The vampires regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement, as if amused by the audacity of his words. And yet, despite their initial skepticism, there was a glimmer of something else in their eyes, a spark of recognition, perhaps, or even respect. For they too had felt the sting of loneliness, the ache of longing that came with immortality. And in the stranger, they saw a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the lonely road that stretched out before them, a road paved with darkness and despair. And so, with a silent nod of understanding, the vampires stepped aside, allowing the stranger and his companions passage into the heart of the mausoleum. For they knew that the answers they sought lay buried deep within its ancient depths, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to seek them out. And as the group descended into the darkness, their torches casting eerie shadows upon the walls, they knew that they were treading upon hallowed ground, a sacred place where the line between the living and the dead blurred and faded, and where the secrets of the past lay waiting to be revealed. As the group ventured deeper into the bowels of the mausoleum, the air grew heavy with the scent of decay and ancient magic. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements echoing the flickering light of the torches that illuminated their path. With each step they took, the sense of foreboding that hung over them like a shroud grew ever stronger, as if the very stones of the mausoleum were infused with the malevolent energy of the vampires who dwelled within its depths. But despite the darkness that surrounded them, the stranger led his companions with unwavering confidence, his gaze fixed upon some unseen destination that lay just beyond their reach. And then, at long last, They came upon a chamber bathed in an eerie blue light, a chamber unlike any they had seen before, its walls adorned with strange symbols and arcane sigils that pulsed with otherworldly energy. In the center of the chamber stood an ancient sarcophagus, its lid carved with intricate patterns that seemed to writhe and twist with a life of their own. And there, upon the lid, lay the source of their village's torment, a young woman, her features frozen in an eternal slumber, her skin as pale as moonlight. With a sense of trepidation, the group approached the sarcophagus, their hearts pounding in their chests as they beheld the sleeping figure within. For they knew that she was no ordinary woman, but a creature of darkness, a vampire, cursed to walk the earth for all eternity. But as they drew closer, the stranger reached out a hand to stay their advance, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "She is not our enemy," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She is but a pawn in a much larger game, a game that has been played out across the ages, a game of power and betrayal, of love and loss." And then, with a solemn gesture, he reached out and touched the lid of the sarcophagus, his fingers tracing the ancient runes that adorned its surface. Instantly, the chamber was filled with a blinding light, as if the very fabric of reality itself were unraveling before their eyes. And then, with a deafening roar, the lid of the sarcophagus exploded into 1,000 pieces, sending shards of stone flying in all directions. And there, lying amidst the rubble, was the young woman, the vampire, her eyes fluttering open for the first time in centuries, her gaze filled with a mixture of confusion and fear. For she had been awakened from her slumber, her fate now intertwined with that of the strangers who stood before her, a fate that would shape the destiny of their village and the world beyond. And as the echoes of their journey reverberated through the chamber, they knew that their adventure had only just begun. With the vampire now awakened from her ancient slumber, the group found themselves faced with a dilemma that tested the very limits of their resolve. For though the vampire's gaze was filled with confusion and fear, they knew that her awakening could spell doom for their village and all who dwelled within its borders. But before they could make a decision, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the earth itself. It was the voice of the vampire, speaking in a language that none among them could comprehend, yet somehow they understood its meaning. "I am no enemy of yours," the vampire's voice echoed, its tone laced with sorrow and regret. "I am but a prisoner of fate, bound to this earthly realm by forces beyond my control." The group exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of how to proceed, for they knew that the vampire's words held a kernel of truth, yet they also understood the danger that her presence posed to their village and its inhabitants. And so, with heavy hearts, they made a decision, one that would shape the course of their destiny for generations to come. They would offer the vampire a chance at redemption, a chance to break free from the shackles of her cursed existence and find peace at last. But such a task would not be easy, for the forces arrayed against them were formidable indeed. The vampire's ancient power, coupled with the dark magic that permeated the mausoleum, posed a threat that few among them were prepared to face. And yet, despite the odds stacked against them, they knew that they could not turn away from their newfound companion, not when her fate was so closely intertwined with their own. And so, with a sense of determination that burned bright within their hearts, they set out into the night, their path illuminated by the flickering light of their torches, for they knew that their journey was far from over, and that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. But they also knew that so long as they stood together, united in purpose and resolve, they would face whatever trials lay ahead with courage and conviction. For theirs was a bond forged in the fires of adversity, a bond that could withstand even the darkest of nights. And as they disappeared into the darkness, their footsteps echoing through the silent forest, they knew that their adventure had only just begun. For the vampire had been awakened, and with her awakening came the promise of a future filled with both peril and possibility, a future that they would face together, come what may. As the group ventured deeper into the forest, their hearts heavy with the weight of their burden, they soon encountered challenges that tested their resolve like never before. They faced fierce creatures of the night, werewolves that prowled the shadows with feral hunger, and ancient spirits that whispered curses upon the wind. Despite their valiant efforts, tragedy struck with cruel inevitability. One by one, the members of the group fell victim to the dangers that lurked in the darkness, their lives snuffed out like candles in a gale. And as they lay dying, their blood staining the forest floor, they whispered words of regret and sorrow, their final breaths a lament for the dreams left unfulfilled and the promises left unkept. In the end, only the stranger and the vampire remained, their bond forged in the crucible of adversity. With tears in their eyes and sorrow in their hearts, they pressed on, determined to see their quest through to its bitter end. But fate had other plans, for as they neared the end of their journey, tragedy struck once more. In a final, desperate bid to save the vampire from her cursed existence, the stranger sacrificed himself, his lifeblood mingling with hers as he offered his soul to the darkness. And as the last traces of life faded from his eyes, the vampire wept bitter tears of sorrow, her heart heavy with the weight of her sins. For though she had been granted the gift of freedom, it had come at a terrible cost, one that she could never hope to repay. Alone in the world once more, the vampire wandered the earth, haunted by the memories of those she had lost and the sins she could never atone for. And though she sought redemption with every fiber of her being, she knew that true absolution would forever elude her grasp. And so, she wandered, a solitary figure in a world consumed by darkness, her soul forever bound by the chains of her past. And as the centuries passed and the world changed around her, she remained a silent witness to the endless cycle of life and death, her existence a testament to the fragile nature of hope and the relentless march of time. And in the end, she knew that she would wander the earth alone, a creature of darkness condemned to an eternity of solitude and regret. For in a world consumed by shadows, there could be no happy endings, only the cold embrace of the night and the endless, unyielding march of time.